down the row, starting with you, Lisa, and we'll just go right on down the row. Each of you take a minute and tell us why people should vote for you. Just why did you run? Why do you think people should vote for you? Okay?
Is it on? I think it's on. Hey, look at that. Okay, I'm going to stand up just because that's how I'm more comfortable. So I am Lisa Rascalli, and I'm running for District 7 because I'm going to do 5 things when I become your legislator. I'm going to push zero-based budgeting. I'm going to push local control on education. I'm going to ensure that we are creating that economic environment that we as the state legislature have the responsibility to do. And then I'm going to reduce regulation. I've been a small business owner with my cute husband. We've done incredible things, but government is overbearing, and we need to get rid of that. And then finally, I'm going to engage just like this. We've had events all over the district. I've knocked hundreds, not thousands of doors, and I've gotten to talk to people and hear your concerns and hear your excitements, and I want to continue this conversation. So thank you for, whether it's coming to this or coming to, when I serve hot dogs on Memorial Day, or coming to my event on Thursday, hint, hint, come out. It's going to be amazing. Because I want people to gather together and join in the conversation. And it's time for that. And so I am grateful for you guys being here. I'm grateful for you guys to put this on. And I'm Lisa Rascalli. Please vote for me.
Thank you again. Would you, those of you who are from District 7, would you raise your hand so I know who I'm talking to? Thank you for coming out, because I know that this is the south end of town. It's a ways from the north end. I appreciate you coming here. I'd like to tell you why I got into the race. A very close friend of mine who is a state legislator came to me and said, Kyle, we need your values and we need your skill sets. He knew what I had done. I had spent 35 years as an external auditor, auditing one of the most disliked organizations in the federal government, the IRS. I take a critical look at government. My teams and I, we identified problems and made recommendations that saved hundreds of millions of dollars. And in the meantime, we made sure that those taxes that were collected fairly and were collected honestly. And that's what I want to bring to the state. I want to bring a critical look at government. I commit to doing just a few things. One is to be an advocate, a strong advocate for this area, to keep budgets in line and low and scrubbed. And I commit that I will act like a Republican when I get down there, and I will not let my integrity be compromised. Thank you. Kyle Anderson, I'd appreciate your vote.
My name is Jason Kyle. I'm running to represent District 8 in the Utah House of Representatives. I'm doing this because I feel that I'm very qualified for it, especially since we're coming on a Republican primary. I've been a lifelong Republican, and I follow the platform. I believe in it. And I believe my main priority is to cut our taxes, to lower the tax burden on families and small businesses. And I believe that if we do that, we can have prosperity and we can be in just a much happier state. Ronald Reagan said that Republicans believe that every day is the 4th of July, and Democrats think that every day is April 15th. But sadly, some of our Republican legislators, they're starting to act like Democrats. And we've actually done very well for a long time, but I've noticed a trend over the last few years that taxes are going up. The legislature has passed 25 tax increases in the past 4 years. You don't always hear about them, but that's not sustainable. And the clear distinction with me is I will look after your constitutional rights, and I will not vote for tax increases. Thank you.
I'm Steve Waldrop. I'm running for Legislative District 8, House of Representatives. Experience matters. I've had 14 years of experience working at Business Depot Ogden. Attracted with a team, a great team, 4,000 jobs to Weber County. Negotiated $500 million in leases with companies from all over the world. brought in investment of $500 million into Weaver County. 6 years ago, I left the Boyer Company to be a little less busy because I could, and I've been very fortunate and blessed to have that opportunity. I've been on the United Way Board of Northern Utah, Ogden Valley Land Trust, Ogden Valley Parks, Ogden Valley Planning Commission. I've served in the community. This is an extension of that service. I believe that our government has to be accountable back to each one of us. Each program, each line item in every budget needs to pass a but-for test, every piece of legislation. But for this piece of legislation, what would happen? If the answer is nothing, then that legislation or that program is not necessary. We have to be accountable. I will hold our government accountable, and I will be accountable back to you. Thank you.
My name is Lorraine Brown. I am running for office because I think I have something to offer. I am the mother of 11 children. I am a small business owner. I am an attorney. I have experience that will serve you well in the state legislature. I have wanted to do this basically all my life, but so that's also the reason I'm running. But I think I have something to offer. I will be a positive influence and advocate for you. You've heard a lot about the things these candidates are not going to do. I want to tell you what I will do. I will sponsor legislation that helps you. I am interested in defending the rights and interests of families. I'm concerned what I see happening to young families, particularly in the state, who are squeezed so tight financially that they are about ready to join the homeless, and that is not an exaggeration. I'm concerned about those who have been dropped with this huge economic development and prosperity in our state. They have fallen off the wagon. I'm concerned about that group and that population. I'm concerned about families. I'm concerned about education in Utah. I will do my homework. I will sponsor legislation that will help you. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry Scott. I guess the reason I'm running is because I care. For those of you who are in Ledge 10, and if you'd raise your hand, I'd love to know who's here from Ledge 10. Thank you. I was born and raised in this county. I met my wife in Ledge 10. I went to school from Ledge 10. I joined the military from Ledge 10. I still live in Ledge 10. I'm a lifelong resident of this county with the exception of some time in the military. The important thing for me is that over my lifetime, I've tried to remain an Ogden person, if you will, a South Ogden person. And I've said to many folks that I am you. I'm not tall, I'm not thin, I'm not smart, but I'm a person who cares deeply. For those who know me, if you read some of the kind words that Ambassador Huntsman said about me, he said that. Please look at my website, terryscow.com. Thank you.
The first legislative candidate's question is, Weaver County recently published its 2018 Strategic Economic Plan. As a legislator, what would you do to help grow and support Northern Utah's economic development? And these are 90-second answers because we've got 12 candidates in only 2 hours.
I think it's on now. Excellent. Thank you for this question, and thank you to all of you for being here. I think that these kind of questions and engagements are exactly why we have the engagement that we do. And so I'm grateful for everyone who's willing to come to these. So for me, economic development is one of those key points for government, in that we shouldn't be choosing winners and losers, especially at the state. We shouldn't pick one county as a winner over another county. But I do think that we as a state legislator, we need to create economic stimulus in terms of our tax policy, in terms of our environmental policy. So we need to create that environment that is the best case scenario for businesses, so that then the economic stimulus that the Weaver County is putting together can then thrive. We need to make sure that we're answering all of those roles and regulations as legislators, rather than kind of spinning our wheels or picking winners and losers. I think Weber County's been the recipient of maybe not being chosen as the chosen spot, when in reality that shouldn't be what the legislature is doing. We as a legislature need to create an economic environment for the entire state, and then let the counties and cities and let those local governments do what they need to do. So thank you.
All right, and the other thing is, let's do the applause after everyone has responded. It will save a lot of time that way. We know that you're all here because you love all the candidates. Kyle.
Well, thank you again, and thank you for those who put this together. I agree with Lisa. I think we need to create an environment where businesses want to come here. I was lucky enough to have grown up in this area and graduated from Weber State and to be able to have a career right here. I want that same thing for my family, so we need to create a business-friendly and family-friendly environment. We want to bring businesses in, but employees are going to come with those businesses, and so we want to have an environment where people want to live. So I think our tax policy is incredibly important. As I was looking through some of the statistics, we're 41 in the nation in per capita income. We are 21 as far as how we burden in the state our taxpayers. I don't think we want to get any higher. The states that are above us, I don't particularly think I'd want to live in those states. And so I think we need to be careful about our tax policy. And I think in Weber County, we also need to be careful about our tax policy. And so I want to work with whoever wins here about how we manage our taxes in Weber County too, so that it's an attractive place for businesses to locate. We need to take care of our environment. People don't want to live, when you come to Weber County in the middle of an inversion, that's not a pleasant thing. And so we need to educate our public as well on things that we can do to improve our environment, so that we create an environment where businesses and families and workers and employers want to be.
Thank you. Do you have any follow-up, Lisa? Do you have any? Okay. All right, thank you. Legislative District 8, Jason Kyle will be first, and then Steve Waldrop, and I'll repeat the question. Weber County recently published its 2018 Strategic Economic Plan. As a legislator, what would you do to help grow and support Northern Utah's economic development?
Okay, so I actually think I would echo a lot of the sentiments from my colleagues to the left here. Can you hear me? Is that good? Okay. So thank you for coming out, by the way. I appreciate it. How many people here actually live in District 8? All right, very, very good to see. Okay, just nice to get a little bit of a pulse. So I actually think that Weber County has a lot to offer. We have a wonderful university, we have great people, we have a lot of skilled people. And so what we do need to do is we need to make sure that as the legislature is keeping the market free and fair. And so the free markets really drive competitiveness and ingenuity. And when Utah County or Salt Lake County gets a little bit of an edge, gets chosen as the winner, that leaves us out. That leaves Weber County out. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have a wonderful economic policy of low taxes throughout for everybody, so that everybody's playing the same playing field. We can't, when you get a huge discount in another county, then you're obviously, as a business, you're going to go to that county. And so, but if it's Utah's a great place to do business, and it should be like that for everywhere. And we just have a ton to offer, and I'll make sure that Weber County it can compete just as easy as the rest of the county. So, thank you.
Steve.
Thank you, Bob, and thanks everyone for being here. I think this question really speaks to my experience. I spent 14 years at Business Depot Ogden doing just this. We created from a closed military facility. At the time I was there, we had 4,000 jobs to our county. We brought in $500 million of private investment into Weber County. So this is something that I'm very familiar with and very comfortable with. There's a few things that are critical to attracting new business. Number one is certainty. No business will come in if there's uncertainty, if there's a lack of a cohesive plan in place. So I applaud what Weaver County has done to try and create a plan that will give some certainty to companies as they come in. Put yourself in the shoes of a corporate executive. You're coming into a number of communities and you're looking at, okay, which one am I going to choose for my facility, for my employees, et cetera, et cetera. If there's a chance that you will look dumb after the selection process is done, and uncertainty creates the opportunity for you to fail, you won't go anywhere near that opportunity. You're going to choose something else. So certainty is one. Education. Every company that comes in looks at the quality of the schools, they look at the quality of the teachers, they look at the results of the schools. That is a critical component to attracting new business. Those are the two greatest things. Our tax policy will impact the certainty. Our fiscal ideas will impact it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to District 10. Terry, what would you do to support Northern Utah's economic development plan?
I think I would follow the example that Governor Huntsman did. He offered extensive economic incentives to bring international and national businesses to Utah. And from the period of his term up through Governor Herbert, they have strived to do that. And unfortunately, much of that development has went down to Salt Lake and to Utah County. It's important that we offer those incentives. It's a world we live in, whether we like it or not. But another component to this is education. If we don't have a quality workforce, if we don't have an educated workforce, then those folks aren't going to come here, and they will take a look at the test scores. They will take a look at the skill level of the students, and that's part of the drivers that they take a look at when they're looking to locate their business here. And I think Weaver County is striving to break out of the kind of the doldrums that we've had in the past. I had the opportunity a few years ago to bring an entity just north of town here. That brought in several hundred jobs. It brings in about $20 million a year into Weaver County every year. And so I've had a little experience with this, and I understand the importance of that, but it is a community project. You got to work with the cities, you got to work with the county, and of course with the legislature, and that partnership helps to improve your opportunities for bringing other entities here as well.
All right, that's Terry.
I think we all agree with the objective, which is to bring business to Weaver County. The problem comes in, is this on?
Put it
Okay,
pretty close.
that's better. The problem is, how do we achieve that objective? And there's disagreement, and unfortunately, we've spent millions of dollars on reports, studies, to help us understand what to do. I would like to see that money going to incentives to businesses to come into Weaver County. We've got a couple of things we need to look at. First of all, you've got transportation issues. The infrastructure has to feed Weaver County. If it doesn't feed Weaver County, it's not going to work. And unfortunately, in the past, the state money has gone south. It's gone south. Legacy comes up to Farmington. Why doesn't it come up any farther? The state hasn't seen any need to do so. The western corridor, we need to get that highway coming all the way up to Weaver County. I have the transportation to feed this. I agree with what has been said in terms of tax policy. I'm very concerned at what happened this last year with a 25% increase in property taxes in Weaver County. That's the death knell for development, the death knell. Okay? I don't know how we can, on one hand, fund a report to increase development of Weaver County and also pass a tax increase like that, which totally, excuse me, heard a comment there. That's very concerning. We have to have tax rates to encourage business to come here. I met a few weeks ago with Utah Business Coalition. They need skilled workers. We need to be able to educate people to feed these businesses in Weaver County. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the second question, and we'll reverse the order. Lisa, so you'll be second. Kyle, remote and online sales have become more of an issue and threat to local brick and mortar shops. What is a good strategy to overcome this, and would you support a tax on online sales?
I would want to look, before I speak to this, because I'm not an expert on this, I would like to look at the effect that would have on our businesses, on our revenue. I'm not in favor of yet another tax. If we do that, then other states are going to tax our online sales as well. And I think we are taxed enough. Now, having said that, I would want to look at the effect that it has on our brick and mortar businesses here, to find out then by them having to pay tax when somebody comes into their store, but not when somebody purchases outside the state, then is that something that is beneficial to business here? I mean, we want to support our businesses, and our tax policy needs to. So right now, I would say I would cautiously not support that until I got more information.
I think this is a really important issue for not only consumers, but for small businesses, for the local, brick and mortar shops that we have in our communities. It's a delicate balance, because we have a lot of companies and organizations that rely solely on those online sales. But we also need to figure out the balance of that policy, because, and I'm not an expert in this either, but my understanding is that technically we as consumers are supposed to report our online sales and pay those taxes anyway. So it seems like we should find a way that doesn't harm our local businesses, but does create some consistency. It seems like there shouldn't be an unfair imbalance in that tax policy where one, again, is favored over another. Again, I don't think government should be picking winners and losers. We as consumers, the free market, should pick winners and losers. But once government gets in that business, then I think it harms us as consumers. And so I think that we need a consistent tax policy that is applied across the board. And then we need to find answers as we as consumers can make our free market choices.
Thank you. That's Legislative District 7. Legislative District 8. Steve, we'll go to you first. Would you support to protect our local brick and mortar shops a tax on online sales?
I think the discussion here is pretty clear. Tax policy is about creating a level playing field. In our state, we haven't reviewed our state tax code and had a major revision in 40 years. So we now have a state tax code that does pick winners and losers, because we have tax policies that were enacted 38 years ago that have never been reviewed again. That lack of accountability troubles me. We need to go back in and look at every provision in the tax code. That's my background. I'm a tax attorney by training, real estate developer by practice. The tax code in Utah needs to have that level of review. Now, with respect to online sales, what we have is an imbalance. We have an unlevel playing field, because some states tax online sales, some states don't tax online sales, some brick and mortar folks pay for it, some don't. That, to me, is an issue, because we don't have a level playing field. When we don't have a level playing field, then consumers cannot pick the winners and losers. Policymakers are picking winners and losers because we haven't leveled the playing field. That is the main point of tax policy, and that's what we haven't done for a long time in our state, and it's due. We almost did it this last legislative session. It didn't quite happen. It's time. This will be a key component of that tax review, is how do we keep that playing field level across the board so that the consumers, the people, can pick the winners and losers. Thank you.
So I am a big advocate of the free market, and we do need to have a level playing field. And from the court decisions that I've been watching, it looks like we are going to end up taxing online sales. And when or if that does happen, what I would advocate is for a normalization of the taxes. Right now, we're paying taxes only in brick and mortar stores, but if we start collecting revenue from online sales as well, what we can do is lower the taxes that are paid. And so if we have a lowered sales tax, then we can pay less taxes, and we can still have about the same revenue. And so what that would do, it would keep the free markets, keep it competitive, and and we would not have a growth in our taxes. If we do want to raise our taxes, then that discussion needs to be had at the legislature, but right now, we shouldn't bank on getting more revenue. What we should do is lower the taxes for the people, lower the taxes for families, and help lower the tax burden to taxpayers. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's District 8. So Lorraine, to you first. Would you support a tax on online sales?
I do support a tax on online sales, and let me tell you why. To me, it is not about leveling the playing field, fairness. This is about the revenue. The sales tax revenue in the state of Utah is falling. It's fallen by millions of dollars because we're all shopping online. Okay, that's a reasonable thing to expect to happen, but we need to replace that revenue. We're a growing state. We need those tax dollars. It's got to come from somewhere. I think that's the appropriate thing to do. It creates some fairness. It may not fill our malls again, but it will create a fairer situation and replace the lost revenue that we've lost through the absence of that sales tax.
Thank you. Okay, Terry.
I think the devil is in the details. You know, a lot of folks shop online not because they have something against a local merchant, but because they can't find locally what they would like to purchase somewhere else. And so that does present a bit of a problem, but it is certainly unfair that local merchants have got to pay all the costs associated with their business. And so I think it's certainly worthy of study to determine the impact on the businesses, because there is an impact no matter how you go, even though the consumer's paying. And I think most of you know now that Amazon is charging sales tax in Utah on any purchase, and clearly Amazon is a big dog in this game locally and nationally.
Thank you. That's Legislative District 10. I think we've gone smoothly enough that we can ask a third question. So, Lisa, this November, Utahns will vote on question number 1, which means the public will offer its opinion to the state legislators and to the governor. And question number 1 is our schools now. Question number 1 proposes a 10-cent per gallon gas increase to improve investment in education by $125 million annually. That's $150 per K-12 student. Funds will be distributed among public education, higher education, and technical colleges. And also, $55 million of that income would be invested in road transportation upgrades for the communities of Utah. So the question then is, would you be in favor of this 10-cent per gallon gas tax increase?
That's like the simplest question to the most complicated topic, right? We're just going to talk about roads and education and taxes and everything that all of us care about in just one fell swoop. Yes or no, right? So here's my thing about that question, is I think that we need to have a real conversation about tax policy. I get a little squeamish when we talk about a gas tax to pay for education, just because I think the tax policy needs to be tied to a source, right? And so I'm for public education spending. I think that we need to figure out where we are. I want us to have a zero-based budget because I want us as taxpayers, to have a line of sight into our budget to understand where our money is going. So we need to understand education funding, because there is a lot of money going into education. I'm not saying it's enough. I'm not saying it's too much. I'm saying that we don't understand the depths of it. We need to understand those programs better. And so there's that really complicated gorilla on the back of this gas tax, which we're saying is going to fund public education and our colleges and all of these things that are going to drive our economic success over the next, umpteen years. So the yes or no of this question is kind of deceiving for us as the public. I love it when public gets involved and drives a question. I'm concerned about the tax policy of it, but I believe that we need to figure out our education funding, because currently I don't think that it's going to the right places.
So when you get in the voting booth, are you gonna vote for it or against it?
I ran out of time, they told me to stop. Just everybody down the line, you're gonna have to answer yes or no. I think I'm gonna have to vote no because of the tax policy. But as your legislator, I'm telling you that I am committed to finding a way for us to figure out an answer to this. But I want more money into education. I don't think that a gas tax is the correct venue. So we need to find a better answer.
Thank you, Lisa. Kyle?
I think the timing of this is interesting because this is a year when we had budget surpluses, and yet now we're asking for a tax increase. Our state has a $17 billion budget, and when we have that much money, I think sometimes then it's easy to just, well, we can spend a little here and a little there. We forget that every one of those $17 billion came from taxpayers. $100 here and $1,000 there, and it's important to them. And so I also would so support a zero-based budget. In our last legislative session, the legislature, to its credit, did scrub its budgets and found almost $70 million of funds that could be reallocated or lowered. And so I think that's a great thing. Imagine if we passed the law that was passed in the House last time but failed in the Senate, requiring the legislature to look at every appropriation on a rotating basis and look for waste, look for inefficiencies, look for various priorities. I think we need to do that before we ask taxpayers to cough up more, whether it's at the gas pump or whether it's on sales taxes, property taxes, you name it. Before we ask for more, I think we need to be able to tell them we have scrubbed our budgets and they are clean. So I would vote no right now.
Okay, thank you. Kyle?
Can I just say ditto to Kyle? So,
Jason, I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm Jason Kyle, next to
I got
Kyle.
Mr. Kyle.
So, yeah, so I would say no. The source of gas for schools doesn't make sense to me. And also, we need to go through, how can you add more taxes when you haven't gone through the whole budget? I think we're taxed too much, our tax burden is too high on families, and that will hurt families. And I think the legislature needs to get its priorities a little bit better. So recently we said, okay, we're going to build a prison that's going to cost us $1 billion. How can we find $1 billion for a prison that we don't need, the one we have is just fine, and then say that and then complain that we don't have money for schools? I say we invest some of that money in schools so that our kids don't end up in that prison. So, it just doesn't make sense to me. That prison, it's going to, who is it going to benefit? It's going to benefit real estate developers and the guys who are well connected. That's just something we don't need. And without a thorough review of our budget, then I will vote no for every tax increase. Our taxes are already too high. But I do think that education is so important. That's one of our constitution, our state constitution says we will do that. That's something we need to do well, and we cannot err on our education. So we do need to find funding for our education.
Thank you, Jason. Steve?
I think it's important to look at the source of this issue. The source of this issue is we borrow $600 million every year from our general fund to fund transportation infrastructure. That $600 million used to be dedicated to education, but now it goes to transportation infrastructure. So now when we look at, okay, how are we going to fund education? Well, we got to now replace money that we're borrowing from ourselves. And again, our legislature does, and government, we do a great job of balancing our overall budget, but we've got these internal swaps that are going on. So the reason that we're looking for money for education and transportation spending, or in transportation taxes, is because we're not paying our way in transportation. We are not doing what we do in our own lives. In your own life, when you have a budget, you stick to it. If you don't, you have problems. In the state, we need to get back to that system where we're not borrowing against our own education system. Now, education is the critical component. I believe that we need to look seriously at our education. We need more accountability in that process. The problem that we have, I think, is that we don't always look at the impact of our spending the way that we do in our own lives. Let me explain. We have evidence of what drives educational success. Family involvement, teacher qualification. We spend money on different things. We need to spend money where it will have the greatest impact. And that requires a stepping back and a look. Now let me answer the question that Bob will ask me if I don't answer it, and that is, I will vote yes on this tax because I want to send a message to the legislature, and maybe to myself, that this is something that needs to be fixed. It's a broken system right now. This will not be the end, the 10-cent tax increase. It'll be a whole different discussion. We need to send that message that we need to review our education spending and fix it.
Thank you, Steve. Let's see, Terry.
No.
See, that made up for Steve's overtime.
And I have Terry's time. I will vote no on this, and the reason is
Lorraine,
that now
you
initiative.
have a really good voice, but people can't hear you unless you put it right by your chin.
All right, here we go. I'm voting no against this, and the reason is that the Now Initiative was proposed long before the legislature funded everything they asked for. The legislature gave a 9% raise to teachers. They gave them the additional programs they wanted. The Now Initiative is still in development, but it is advisory in the sense that they have already received the benefits that they're asking for in the legislative session. I don't think we should be paying for education with gasoline tax. I think it's bad tax policy. You have people who are driving cars who have no kids who are paying, no, this is the way you do it. And I agree with the assessment here in terms of you've had the legislature pulling out of the general fund transportation dollars that should be paid for by the gasoline tax. I may agree down the road to increase the gasoline tax, but it would be to pay for transportation projects, not to pay for education. So leave the general fund alone, that belongs to education, and use the gasoline tax to pay for the highways. That's what should have been happening all along. For some reason we got this backwards this session, probably because there was extra money in the general fund, so they grabbed it. But as a long-term policy here, you paid for projects out of the tax dollars that serve that population. That's what makes for good tax policy. It's fair, it's positive. So, thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the presentation from the legislative candidates.